On the night of December 19, 2004, a gang of criminals executed what would become one of the largest bank robberies in British history. The Northern Bank in Belfast, Northern Ireland, was targeted in an operation so meticulously planned that it would take investigators years to unravel. By the time authorities discovered what had happened, the thieves had vanished with approximately £26 million in cash. The audacity of the crime shocked a nation still healing from decades of political violence, and the methods employed would prove far more sinister than a simple break-in. Belfast in 2004 existed in a delicate peace. The Good Friday Agreement of 1998 had officially ended decades of sectarian conflict known as the Troubles, but tensions remained. The Northern Bank, headquartered on Donegal Square, served as one of Northern Ireland's principal financial institutions. It employed hundreds of staff and processed millions of pounds daily. Among its employees were senior managers with access to the bank's most secure areas, including the cash holding center where vast sums were stored before distribution. These individuals, by virtue of their positions, held keys to extraordinary wealth. They also became targets. The operation began on Sunday evening, December 19. According to police reports and witness statements, armed men arrived at the home of Chris Ward, a supervisor at the Northern Bank's cash center. Ward lived outside Belfast with his family. The intruders were professional, calm, and terrifyingly precise. They told Ward they were taking control of his family. His wife and young son would be held hostage, they explained, while Ward himself would go to work the following day as if nothing had happened. The message was clear: cooperate, and his family would live. Resist, and there would be consequences. Simultaneously, a second team struck the home of Kevin McMullen, another senior employee at the bank's cash center. McMullen held a position that granted him access to secure areas and knowledge of procedures. Like Ward, he found armed men at his door. His family was taken hostage under identical terms. The criminals had researched their targets thoroughly, understanding the bank's hierarchy, security protocols, and shift schedules. They knew which employees could access the vault, who held override codes, and when the building would be most vulnerable. This was not opportunistic crime. It was a meticulously planned military-style operation. On Monday, December 20th, Ward and McMullen reported to work. Under constant surveillance by their captors, who maintained contact through mobile phones, the two men appeared to perform their normal duties. Colleagues noticed nothing unusual. The criminals had instructed them to act naturally, to raise no alarms, and to wait. Throughout the day, the hostages at both homes remained under guard. The families were told that any attempt to signal police would result in immediate harm. As evening approached, the thieves prepared to move to the final phase. The bank was closing, most staff were leaving, but Ward and McMullen remained inside. That night, according to investigators, the gang used Ward and McMullen's access to enter the bank's cash holding center. Reports indicate that at least one of the men was brought back to the facility after hours, accompanied by criminals posing as colleagues or using forged credentials. Once inside, they bypassed alarm systems and security protocols that would have stopped ordinary thieves. The vault contained cash in various denominations, prepared for ATM distribution and branch transfers. Over several hours, the gang loaded money into vehicles. The operation required multiple trips, multiple people, and precise timing. By dawn, the vault was significantly depleted. On Tuesday morning, December 21st, the scale of the theft became apparent. Bank staff arriving for work discovered the depleted vault. Estimates of the stolen amount varied initially, but investigators eventually confirmed that approximately £26 million had been taken, most in Northern Ireland issued sterling notes. The families of Ward and McMullen were released unharmed after the robbery was complete. Both men immediately contacted police, providing detailed statements about their ordeal. Investigators from the Police Service of Northern Ireland launched what would become one of the largest criminal investigations in the region's history. The thieves, however, had vanished without trace. Police faced an immediate challenge: the stolen notes were largely untraceable. While some denominations carried serial numbers that could be tracked, the sheer volume of cash made recovery difficult. Investigators interviewed Ward, McMullen, and their families extensively. Both employees were initially treated as potential suspects, standard procedure in such cases, but detectives quickly concluded they were victims, not conspirators. Attention turned to identifying the gang. Who had the capability to execute such a sophisticated operation? Who had the resources to plan surveillance of bank employees? And critically, who had the network to launder £26 million? Within days, the investigation took a political turn. Northern Ireland's political landscape remained fractured, with former paramilitary groups transitioning to civilian politics. Some officials publicly speculated that the Provisional Irish Republican Army, or elements within it, might be responsible. The IRA had a history of bank robberies to fund operations during the Troubles. Although the organization had declared a ceasefire, suspicions arose that dissident members or criminal offshoots remained active. These allegations became intensely controversial, threatening the fragile peace process. Sinn Féin, the political party associated with the Republican movement, vehemently denied any connection. The robbery became as much a political crisis as a criminal investigation. In February 2005, police made their first significant breakthrough. Officers raided a sports club in Belfast and discovered approximately £200,000 in northern banknotes hidden on the premises. The cash matched serial numbers from the robbery. Further searches of properties connected to Republican networks yielded smaller sums. While these recoveries represented a tiny fraction of the total, they provided evidence of a distribution network. Investigators believed the bulk of the money had been moved quickly out of Northern Ireland, possibly to the Republic of Ireland or further abroad. The laundering operation, they concluded, must have been planned in advance, with routes and safe houses prepared. Over the following months, police arrested several individuals in connection with the robbery. Chris Ward, the bank's supervisor, was arrested in November 2005, shocking many who viewed him as a victim. Prosecutors alleged he had been complicit in the planning, though Ward denied this. He was later released without charge. Other arrests followed, targeting suspected members of paramilitary organizations. However, building a prosecutable case proved extraordinarily difficult. Witnesses were reluctant to testify, fearing retribution. Physical evidence was scarce. Most of the stolen cash remained missing. By 2006, despite hundreds of interviews and extensive surveillance operations, no one had been successfully prosecuted for the actual robbery. Tracking the stolen currency became an international effort. Investigators coordinated with police forces across Ireland, the United Kingdom, and Europe. Financial intelligence units monitored for unusual cash deposits or currency exchanges. In some cases, northern banknotes appeared in legitimate businesses, spent by individuals who claimed to have received them unknowingly. In other instances, larger sums were discovered during unrelated criminal investigations. By 2008, authorities estimated they had recovered approximately £4 million, less than 1/6 of the total. The majority remained at large, likely laundered through complex networks of property purchases, shell companies, and overseas transfers beyond the reach of investigators. In 2009, authorities achieved a partial victory. Ted Cunningham, a Cork-based businessman, was convicted in Ireland of money laundering in connection with the Northern Bank robbery. Police had found £94,000 in northern banknotes at a property linked to Cunningham. He became the first person successfully convicted in relation to the crime, receiving a 10-year sentence. Prosecutors argued Cunningham was part of a network laundering stolen funds through legitimate businesses. However, he was not accused of participating in the actual robbery. The conviction confirmed investigators' suspicions about a Southern Irish laundering route, but the identity of the core robbery gang remained elusive. The question of IRA involvement never found definitive public resolution. In 2005, the Irish and British governments, along with the Independent Monitoring Commission, stated they believed the Provisional IRA was responsible. This assessment was based on intelligence, operational methodology, and the sophisticated nature of the crime. However, no IRA member was ever charged specifically with the robbery. Sinn Féin continued to reject the allegations. Some investigators privately acknowledged that proving institutional IRA involvement was different from identifying individual perpetrators. Others suggested that even if former paramilitaries were involved, they may have been acting independently, as criminals rather than as an organization. The political dimension ensured that full transparency remained impossible. The robbery forced immediate changes in banking security. Northern Bank, which later became part of Danske Bank, withdrew its entire circulation of Northern Ireland-issued notes and replaced them with a new design, rendering the stolen currency increasingly difficult to spend. Financial institutions across the UK reviewed employee access protocols, implementing multi-person authorization for vault access and enhanced surveillance of senior staff. The robbery demonstrated that physical security could be bypassed by targeting human vulnerabilities. Insurance companies paid out the loss, but the reputational damage to the bank was significant. The incident became a case study in security failures, cited in banking industry training worldwide. For the families of Ward and McMullen, the psychological impact endured long after the physical danger passed. Both families spoke later of the terror they experienced, held in their homes by armed criminals with no assurance they would survive. McMullen's wife described the hours as the longest of her life, not knowing whether her husband would be killed if something went wrong at the bank. Ward's family faced similar anguish, compounded later by his arrest and the public suspicion it generated. Though cleared of wrongdoing, Ward's reputation suffered. The ordeal highlighted the ruthlessness of the gang, willing to use innocent families as leverage. It also demonstrated the perpetrators' confidence that their victims would comply rather than risk loved ones. Nearly 2 decades later, the Northern Bank robbery remains technically unsolved. While Ted Cunningham was convicted of laundering proceeds, no one has been successfully prosecuted for the actual theft. Most of the £26 million has never been recovered. Police files remain open, and detectives continue to pursue leads, though public updates have become rare. Some investigators believe the core perpetrators are known but cannot be prosecuted due to insufficient evidence or unwilling witnesses. Others suggest that key figures may have died or left Ireland. The case stands as one of the largest unsolved robberies in British criminal history, a testament to meticulous planning and, ultimately, to the limits of law enforcement. The Northern Bank robbery occupies a unique place in criminal history. It combined the sophistication of a military operation with the brutality of hostage-taking, executed in a society still emerging from conflict. The crime exposed vulnerabilities in banking security that went beyond technology and alarms, targeting instead the human beings who operated the systems. It demonstrated how leverage over families could overcome institutional safeguards. The political controversy it generated illustrated how crime in post-conflict societies carries dimensions beyond the purely criminal. For investigators, it remains a frustrating failure. For criminals, it stands as a near-perfect heist. And for the families involved, it remains a trauma endured but never fully resolved, a night when ordinary lives intersected with extraordinary violence.